also Genesis 37, 5 through 11. Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna talk a little bit in there as well, but 50:20 says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." And there's there's some. Oh, sorry. Okay, we're back online now. Here we go. So, today I want to talk about something I think every one of us has experienced at some point in our lives: the middle. The middle is, you know, that place where we get sometimes where we've said the prayers, we've started to live the life, and then we get silence. And so, the middle is something that I struggle with. I don't know if anybody else struggles with that, but I don't want to send a message. Uh-oh, I messed things up now. There we go. I lost my service. There it goes. Okay. Um, we like beginnings. Beginnings are exciting because there's hope. And we love endings, especially when the ending is good. We love being able to look back and say, now I understand why God allowed that, right? And so, but but when you look back, nobody really likes the middle, right? And um, so the middle is where you prayed, the answer hasn't come. The middle is where you know what God promised, but your life doesn't look anything like that promise. The middle is where you start asking questions like, God, where are you? God, did I hear you wrong? God, how long is this going to last? And um, when you look, when you listen to the prayer requests that we have, and the last time I seen one of our handouts, the prayer request is it just keeps getting longer and longer and longer, um, and sometimes um, I think we add to that prayer request because we want God to start working faster in our lives and start answering those prayers faster. But sometimes our job is just to sit still, and the silence is. I don't like the silence. I don't know, I don't know if you like it, but I dang sure don't like it. And it says sometimes the hardest thing about the middle is that we don't know how long the middle is going to be. And so in 37, Genesis 37, verse 5, it talks about Joseph having a dream, and um, Joseph knew something about that. Joseph had a dream, and Joseph's story starts with a dream. And so 37:5 says, "Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more." And God showed Joseph that there was something ahead of him. There was a purpose for his life, but almost immediately everything started going in the opposite directions. His brother hated him. They threw him into a pit. They sold him into slavery. He ended up in a Potiphar's house. Then he was falsely accused and thrown into prison. So think about that for a second. Um, 37:6 says, "So he said to them, 'Please hear this dream which I have dreamed.'" Now, I've I've had some dreams, um, and I'm going to talk a little bit about um, some dreams that I've had in sobriety, and some dreams that I had in active addiction. And it's no secret that, I mean, Scott, told y'all earlier that our sobriety date is 3/20 of 2019, and for that day I'm forever grateful. And I remember there was a time when I had a dream, and um, I had a dream of just a different life. It wasn't the life I have today, I promise you. But it was a different life. I didn't want to be homeless. Um, luckily, I guess I could say, when I was homeless, or me and Brandy were homeless, it was a little cooler than it is now. It was like, I think a couple of days it was like 34 degrees, the high. So it was a little cooler than it is today. But um, you go from one extreme to the other, right? It's like you're either burning up and you're begging for shelter, or you're freezing to death and you're begging for shelter. But either way, you're begging for shelter. And I was begging for shelter in all the wrong places. And it wasn't in the church, and it wasn't in God. It was just shelter anywhere I could get it. And most of the time it was shelter in what we call trap houses, and dirty places that sin is rampant in, right? And when you find shelter in those places, there's no way um, that I'm ever going to find a place like this, right? Because my whole vision on this thing is, how do I change the way I feel right now, right? And when we're talking about the middle, right now is definitely not in those places, right? And so I would sit in those places, and I would get stuck in some places, right? And and it would be I would find myself reaching out for, I didn't know what God was, but I was reaching out, and I would just be like, please help me, right? And then I would see, like, I would get pulled over and I would go to jail, and I'd be like, this ain't the type of help I was looking for. But the reality is that I asked for help, and he pulled me out of that place, and he put me in another place where if I did something different with my life when I left jail, then I could probably start heading in a different direction. But instead, I was at the very bottom coming out of jail, and the first person that would pick me up was the same people at the trap house. And it was because I didn't have nobody else to reach out to. Those were the people that I knew, and so those were the people that I reached out to, right? And so it says Joseph had a promise from God, but his circumstances looked nothing like the promise. And I had a bunch of promises from people when me and Brandy first got sober, and we were we had got sober. We found co-ed sober living, and from I've always wanted to say it from behind the pulpit. Co-ed sober living doesn't work, folks. And man, maybe now that it's said it from up here, maybe people will start listening, but I doubt it. But it co-ed sober living, we found a place, and we got in there, and it was it was just a fancier version of a trap house, is what we found out. And there was a couple women, there was a couple men, there was even another couple in there, and none of them people were sober. And the other couple, the man was selling the wife to pay the rent. And they were still living an active addiction life, but they were doing it in sobriety, right? And so I had this guy, or this man in my life. His name's Steve, and he gave me all these promises, like, Shelby, if you'll do the work, I promise your life will get better. Shelby, if you'll work the steps, I promise your life will get better. And Shelby, if you will just start saying this simple prayer, I promise your life will get better. Well, I'll tell you, on 3/28 of 2019, when I was like 8 days sober, and Steve said, if you'll start praying, your life will get better, I didn't want to hear that. And one, I didn't know God. I didn't want to pray. I didn't believe none of this stuff, right? And so um, I was talking to Steve one day, and he said, Shelby, just say this simple prayer, and watch your life change. And so he said, Shelby, just say, please help me stay sober in the morning. And then at night, please, or thank you for helping me stay sober today. And I started saying that, and these little promises started showing up in my life. Like, we were living in this trap house that was sober, and then all of a sudden we'd go to this meeting, and then there was this guy named Critter, and um, he knew that we were struggling in this situation, um, and he had told Brandy and I, he said, I have a spare bedroom. Why don't you come and stay with me? And so to me today, me and Brandy were talking about this last night. In that moment, that was a promise that God answered, or that was a prayer that God answered that we didn't even know that we asked for, right? And so we got taken out of the sober house and moved into Critter's house. And I love Critter to death. right? But he was a single guy, and his house was like a single guy's house would look. And so um, we stayed there for a couple weeks, and then all our dreams came true. Steve reached out and said, "Why don't you come and live on my living room floor with me?" Man, we arrived, right? Um, we were 6 months sober, living on a living room floor, and both Brandy and I are like, if this is as good as it gets, why are we doing this? Right? Like, why are we doing this living on a living room floor? Right? Every morning, Steve wakes up, he trips over the air mattress. Now, it was a king size air mattress, and it was like that tall, like it was fluffy, right? But it was the living room floor of somebody's house. And Steve would come walking through there, bouncing off the bed, and like, this is as good as it's going to get. 6 months into this deal, and this is what we're doing. And, and then that thing in the back of your head starts telling you, like, man, you could be living better down the road at the trap house, right? At least you'd have a room to yourself or whatever. Or you could, I mean, I started getting some paychecks. I mean, I could go get a week at a motel, right? Because that always worked out good for me. And so it says, um, Joseph had a promise from God, but his circumstances looked nothing like the promise. Have you ever been there? You believe God is doing something in your life, but when you look around, you can't see it. That's the middle, right? Um, in that living room, on that floor, everything we asked for, we had. We had shelter, we had food, we had sobriety. Our health started to get better. We started gaining weight. We started to smile again. It took a long time to do that, but it started to happen. Um, that was our middle, right? That was the middle in that moment, and it in that moment I couldn't see it, and the thing started telling me, like, I don't know if I want to do this. And I'll tell you guys, just last week I started thinking those thoughts. I'm 7.5 years sober, you know, and I've had those thoughts constantly because there's things that I pray for. There's people that I pray for, people that I love that are hurting, people that I love that are struggling, and I'm asking God to help, and I'm not seeing the help, right? And so, um, but I know if I will step back and if I will just keep praying and if I will keep believing, um, like my friends Bruce and Liz, um, I was talking to one of our therapists over there, and I'm hearing there's more and more people that were really close to these people. And I think well, we've been down here for 3.5 years, and about 7, 8 months into being down here, Bruce reached out to me first and asked if I had a job opening because he really wanted to get into working in treatment. And and I did everything I could to get Bruce and Liz down here, and there was an open position, and so I got Bruce hired on. And I was telling the therapist the other day, like, I wonder if things would have been different if I wouldn't have worked so hard to get them down here. I wonder if Liz would still be okay if they were still in Oklahoma City, right? Because those are the thoughts that I have. I don't know what you guys think, but like, my selfishness, my self-centeredness wants to make this thing, it's got to be about me, right? And so I start saying that to the therapist, and then all of a sudden it kicks in. This isn't about me, right? There's something that is going to be used for good that comes from this. And I don't know what that is, right? My job is not to know that. My job is to pray. My job is to love Bruce, love the family, and just do everything I can to get them, to know that we're praying for them, right? And so it says the pit doesn't cancel the promise. When Joseph was sitting in the pit, he couldn't see Egypt. He couldn't see Pharaoh. He couldn't see the position God would eventually give him. All he could see were the walls of the pit. And sometimes we make the mistake of judging God's plan by what we can see right now. Don't judge the whole story by the chapter you're currently living in. Joseph's pit wasn't the end of his story. His slavery wasn't the end. His prison wasn't the end. And whatever you're facing today doesn't have to be the end of yours either. There are the things God can be doing that we simply cannot see yet. God was with Joseph in every place. One of the most powerful things about Joseph's story is that Scripture repeatedly tells us that the Lord was with Joseph. So God was with him in Potiphar's house. God was with me and Brandy in the sober house. He was with us at Critter's house. He was with us at Steve's house, and he's still with us today. And I couldn't see it, right? I have an amazing wife, and it's funny when I start going down, she does everything she can to lift me up. And then whenever she starts going down, I do everything I can to lift her up because she is a person that I see every day and I can feel the energy, right? And same for her. And so it says, I think sometimes we associate God's presence with things going well. We think if God is with me, why am I struggling? But the Bible never promises that God's presence means an easy life. And when we were a year sober, um, I got into racing bikes again, and um, I thought it'd be a good idea to get Brandy into racing bikes. I don't know why I thought that, but I still make bad decisions, and and I remember and and I remember we were in Tulsa at this big race up there, and uh, we were both excited to be able to go up there for the first time. We had a little bit of money, and so we were going to go rent a motel. And we were going to go do all these things, and then we were going to leave the race and go to Brandy's mom's in Stillwater, and it was going to be just a great weekend, right? And the first day of the race, hadn't even started racing yet. We were still practicing, and there's a picture that me and Brandy have of me and Brandy on the track together going over a jump, and this lady named Ashley, she took the picture, and it's an awesome picture. And it captures a moment in my life. It's pure joy, right? And and I know God is working in my life, and I know today for sure. And when I was talking to Brandy last night when we are going over this, and I'm asking her for her suggestions, um, I'm thinking about that moment because in that moment I see pure joy and happiness, and I'm loving everything about it. And then as soon as we come off the track, um, everything in our life is fixing to change, and we're like brand new sober, right? I, we're close to a year, if not already a year, but um, Brandy, females race first, so Brandy goes up, and the first lap around the track, she wrecks, breaks her collarbone, breaks 6 ribs, comes off the track, and I'm like getting ready to start packing things up. Like, I mean, you can clearly tell that the collarbone is broke, and um, by her anger and her meanness, I can tell that she's in a lot of pain, and we probably don't need to spend 6 or 8 more hours out here in this heat. And so I reach down and I grab my phone, and I see a message from her mother that tells me I need to call her, and then there's a 911 behind it. And now if we're a year sober, we're just brand new a year sober. And so I get my phone and I walk off and I call her mom, and me and Brandy have been together at this time, I think, like 4 or 5 years, and I feel close to her mom. Even in this moment I felt close, but I had never seen her mom cry. I don't even know if I'd seen Brandy cry by this point, but I had never seen her mom cry. I'd never heard her mom cry, but her mom answered the phone and I could tell that she was crying. And so I knew that that was not going to be a good phone call. And and she says, Shelby, Cooper, which is Brandy's youngest son, he didn't wake up this morning. And we're talking about the middle, right? And if and we have been praying, and Brandy had been praying, I just want to see my kids, and I've been praying, I want Brandy to see her kids, and now there's not another chance to see Cooper, right? And she's like, Shelby, you can't tell her. Whenever y'all get done, y'all come to my house and I'll tell her. And so I had to hold this in, right? Now, I did what any good person in recovery does when they have stuff like that happen. I immediately hung up and called my sponsor. And my sponsor, he's not the most gentle person. And he says, I'm like, Steve, Brandy's youngest son passed away, and I need, some guidance or whatever. And he's like, Shelby, people die. I'm like, bro. And he's like, pray. That's what you need to do is pray. And I'm like, but I don't know how to pray. And he said, just asking for guidance, right? And so I hang up and I go back to normal life. Go back to get my bike. I go up to the starting gate, and on the track I'm crying, and there's 3 pictures that you can clearly see that I'm crying. And before I get off the track, I got to suck it up, right? Because I can't let Brandy see that I've had tears in my face. And so we leave the track, and Brandy is being so mean to me, guys. Y'all would not believe how mean she is being to me. And I'm like, you have no idea what's fixing to happen. You have no idea what is fixing to happen. And I can't be mean back, right? Now, I do know that I hit a few potholes and a few curbs, and I'll be honest from the pulpit. She was being mean, and I couldn't be mean back, so that was me being mean, right? Let's feel a little discomfort in your shoulder. Oh, sorry about that curb. But it's okay, guys. Y'all can lighten up a little bit. But the middle, right? You get in this place, and in my head, like, it's all getting ready to be bad. Because she's getting ready to go get high, and I'm getting ready to go get high too. And that's what I'm thinking. But in my head, I don't know God, guys. I'll be honest. 4.5 years into my sobriety is when me and Brandy, or when I'm almost positive is me and Brandy together, but that is when we truly met God. And I don't know how long I got, so I got to hurry up. But um, we, uh, we, I start asking, like, if you're up there, I just pray that this all goes good. I don't know who you are, but I'm pretty sure you know who I am. So please guide me in this situation. And we go to the hospital. They give her a sling, and they give her some pain meds that she didn't take. We go to her mom's, and her mom tells her, and then all of a sudden she comes out and she's like, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I'm like, yeah, you're right. You had no idea. Right. And we walk through that. And then on the other side of that, what happens, right? The flowers start growing. We stay sober through it all, and then we finally get to a point in our lives where one day we wake up and it's it's a new thing, right? Um, I now need a pacemaker, and it's like collarbone, Cooper passing. Now Shelby needs a pacemaker. And in that pacemaker, the bicycle stuff gets taken away. And that's small potatoes compared to the life that's fixing to come, right? And in the moment, though, I'm thinking like, dang, man, like being able to race bikes, I was able to get out there and I was able to do good things. Um, but as what was happening was bicycle racing was taking me away from recovery. And I didn't realize it, but I knew that I wasn't going to meetings. I wasn't asking for guidance from God or anything like that. And I go in, Brandy's in a state of depression, right? I get a pacemaker. Like Brandy, I don't think got out of bed for 28 straight days. I would go to work, I'd come home, the room would be dark, and I'd just be like, let's go to bed then. So I would wake up at 5 in the morning, I'd come home at 5 in the evening and just go to bed. And like that ain't what God intended this recovery to be. And and so it's like, what do you do? Where do you reach out for help? And it's like, I know where to reach out for help. What? Is that God? Okay. I'll hurry up. I heard you. So, um, it says, oh man, I love. Sometimes the greatest evidence that God is with us isn't that He immediately removes the situation. Sometimes it's that He gives us the strength to keep walking through it. Joseph didn't stop being faithful just because life became unfair. That's important because your character in the middle matters. Anybody can praise God when everything is going right. And I can tell you the first 5 or 6 months of our recovery, it was all smiles. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. But inside, we were happier, right? Outside, you may have been able to tell that something was happening. But as time happens, as things happen and things go on, you start seeing things get better on the outside as well. It says anybody can praise God when everything is going right. Can we still trust Him when we don't understand? Can we still do what's right when nobody is watching? Can we still believe God is good when life doesn't feel good? Don't let the middle change who you are. Joseph had plenty of reasons to become bitter. There's a whole lot in the early recovery part that we could have given up any time we wanted to, and there's probably a lot of people around us that wouldn't have. They would have been like, "I seen it coming," right? But the fact that we continue to walk through and continue to walk through, and I'll be honest, guys, um, being married in recovery doesn't make it easier. It makes it harder sometimes, right? Because now I got somebody that's going to co-sign for me, and she's going to co-sign on me too, right? And so you have to learn to call each other on their stuff, right? You cannot allow this thing to continue to take you down when things start getting hard. And in the middle of every storm, in the middle of waiting on any prayer that you're asking to be answered, there's going to be silence. But that's time to meditate. That's time to continue to talk. That's time to ask God to please show me where you are, right? It says, he could have said, forget everybody. I'm looking out for myself from now on, but he didn't. And that's something we need to hear. Be careful what happened to you doesn't become what controls you. There's a whole lot of people that are in active addiction. There's a whole lot of people that are in active homelessness. Bless you. There's a whole lot of people that are struggling right now because of a situation that happened to them when they were little, the situation that happened to them when they were in the middle of their age, or they're in a situation that happened to them a month ago, but they're allowing that problem to control everything about them. And there were so many times whenever I was growing up that, you know, I had some situations happen to me where that controlled everything about who I was as a person. And it controlled me when I was 35 years old, and it happened to me when I was 10 years old. And it still controlled me like a puppet on a string. My anger, my resentments to everybody. I made it all about that one thing that happened to me when I was a little kid. And there's a lot of people out there right now that are sticking needles in their arms, they're pouring alcohol down their throat, they're sleeping under bridges because of a situation that happened to them a long time ago, right? It says, people can hurt us without getting to decide who we become afterward. Joseph kept serving. He kept using the gifts God had given him. He kept moving forward. He couldn't control what other people did to him, but he could control what kind of man he became because of it. And today I use that for good. I remember being able to tell a story and do a group in front of a room full of 65 men. And the first time I ever spoke out loud about the situation that happened to me as a child, being able to speak out loud about that thing and then looking out and seeing not everybody, but there was like 5 or 6 big prison, they had just got out of prison. I'm tough. I ain't going to cry. I'm going to be a man. Those type of guys. They had tears in their eyes. And after that group was done, they came to me and they said, Shelby, I've never heard another man speak about that. And not only speak about it, but speak about it with confidence. And I could tell Shelby that no longer controls you. How do I get to that point? And by this time, I didn't know God. Like, I didn't have the relationship that I had. But the first thing that came out of my mouth was prayer. And that wasn't Shelby speaking. That was God speaking through Shelby, and I had no idea it was happening. I don't know what happened to those guys. I don't know if they stayed sober. I don't know if they went back to prison. I don't know nothing about it. But what I do know is that they were given an opportunity to not have that thing control them anymore. And whether or not they took the opportunity, that's not for me to decide. That's between them and God. And so it says, God can use what you thought runs you. Eventually, Joseph went from prisoner to second in command over Egypt. Then famine came. And the same brothers who had sold Joseph into slavery eventually stood in front of him needing help. Joseph finally had the ability to look backward and see something he couldn't see while he was living through it. That's when he tells them, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. Notice, Joseph didn't say what happened was good. Being betrayed was not good. Being sold was not good. Being falsely accused was not good. Prison was not good, but God was able to bring good out of it. And he's able to bring good out of any situation that you're going through right now if you just keep on pushing. And so there's a difference. We don't have to pretend our painful experiences were good in order to believe God can redeem them. That's the kind of God we serve. He can take something that should have destroyed you and somehow use it to develop you. He can take your scars and use them to help somebody else heal. He can take the worst chapter of your life and eventually use it as part of your testimony. And this is my favorite part of this whole deal right here. You may be living in somebody else's, you may be living to help somebody else's prayer. Somebody may be praying for something that you have already lived through, and they're going to come across your path, and you're going to be able to help that person. You're going to be able to guide that person because you've already walked through it. Now, you could get bitter over that experience, and that situation may never happen, right? Or you can keep on getting through and keep on going. And the middle that we're stuck in, the middle that you're stuck in, the answer will come in that moment as long as you stay faithful and you stay connected to your higher power. You stay connected to your God, right? It says, Joseph probably thought the story was about what God was doing for Joseph, but it was bigger than Joseph. God positioned him so that when famine came, countless lives could be saved. That means Joseph's difficult middle was not only preparing something for him, God was preparing Joseph for other people. And I believe today that when I was 4.5 years sober, and Brandy said, I'm going to start typing my prayers out so that I can feel a better connection. Um, in my head, I was like, that's stupid. Because I didn't know God, right? I didn't know that, like, God was speaking through Brandy to get to me. And so she started typing her prayers out. And I think a couple days after watching her do it, I was like, well, maybe I need to start doing that. And so then I started typing. And then there's a preacher up there in Enid named James that anytime I called that man, he showed up. Anytime I called him, he answered the phone. And every time I talked to him, he always had a smile on his face, and he was always happy to hear from me, and he always said, let me pray for you. And so I would always allow him to. And then I started asking questions like, James, can you bring a Bible study in? James, can we take clients to your church? James, can you do this? James, can you do that? And he always said yes. And I didn't know it at the time, but that was God showing up in my life. And I'll tell you today that when God is in my life, my family sees God, right? And when God's not in my life, my family sees that as well. And so it says, maybe some of the things you've survived were not only about you. Maybe somebody you're going to meet needs the wisdom you gained. Maybe somebody needs to hear how God carried you through something they're facing right now. Maybe somebody needs to know, I've been where you're standing and I'm telling you that you can make it. God wastes nothing when we put it in his hands. And I believe 100% that every time I say, God, I need your help, he shows up. And every time I say, God, can you please show up, he shows up. And I'm going to close with this. Somebody here may be in the middle right now. You've prayed, you've waited, you've tried to stay faithful, and you're wondering when something is finally going to change. For some of you that are in treatment, you said the prayer, you showed up to the center, now you're in the middle. You have an opportunity to change your life for the better. It ain't going to be easy. This deal is not about easy. Sometimes you will struggle and struggle and struggle, but if you have the opportunity to struggle, you're still breathing. But I can remind you of something Joseph's story teaches us. God is still working in the middle. When you can't see him working, he's working. When you don't understand the plan, he's working. When somebody has hurt you, he's working. When one door after another closes, he's working. When you're sitting in a place you never thought you'd be, God has not forgotten where you are. So don't quit in the middle. Don't walk away in the middle. Don't decide God has abandoned you just because you haven't reached the ending yet. Joseph couldn't see the palace from the pit, but God could. And maybe today you can't see what God is doing with your life. That's okay. You don't have to see the whole road to take the next faithful step. Trust him in the middle, because the God who was there at the beginning is still God in the middle, and he will still be God when you finally reach the other side. And that is all. I think we're supposed to sing the end song. Maddie, do you have our favorite song up there? Y'all were awful quiet today.